Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin, and today we are continuing our Heal and Be Healthy series, The Journey. Today I have my co-host, Claire Miller. Hi, Claire.
Hello there, everyone.
And today we have a special guest, Bridgette Ochoa. Hi, Bridge.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, happy to have you. So Bridgette Ochoa is a leading Ayurvedic practitioner and educator based out of Los Angeles. She works one-to-one with clientele worldwide, runs online courses, and hosts Ayurvedic retreats. Ooh. She helps her clients to boost energy, lose weight, reduce the need for medications, and rejuvenate the body away from disease toward a state of health. She has worked as an occupational therapist in various inpatient and outpatient settings for the past 5 years before studying Ayurveda and starting her own practice. And I can say personally that she is very professional. She knows her shit. She's educated, and she's very passionate about educating clients because I did her 3-day challenge, which she has a 3-day challenge, which I'll mention at the end of this podcast too. But if you want to kind of like cleanse and reset, and we'll be sharing some of her Instagram handles and her email. But in the meantime, hello, Bridge. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. You guys are awesome. It's like my two favorite people.
Oh,
thank you.
You're just saying that because it's true.
Of course.
So Bridge, I have some experience, just talking with you and, talking about like how yoga and Ayurveda are like really one and the same. And I think I told you that, I became very interested in Ayurveda. Obviously, being on the yogic path, I've learned some about it in different settings. And depending on the teacher that you have, you'll learn certain aspects of Ayurveda. But to have someone who really embodies it in their lifestyle is a whole different story, which is what you do. And I can sense it, I can smell it, I know it. And Claire and I talk often on this podcast that the people that have come on this show are people who have been in holistic healing in one way or another. And because of our journey, which is what this series is about, you have a depth of understanding and intimacy with Ayurveda. So let's go ahead and just start with your story as far as what brought you to Ayurveda.
Good question. Okay, man, it's a long one, but I'll put it into a nutshell for you. So basically, I was working as an occupational therapist in different settings. So I did travel therapy when I was starting out, while I did contract therapy, where I basically worked when I was a new grad, I worked at 5 different home health centers, and then one skilled nursing facility, and then another long-term acute care center. Those are places where people are in critical condition. And so I worked at various settings all at once as a new grad. Needless to say, I got really burnt out. And then I went into travel therapy, and I did various settings around the US and did, home health, inpatient, outpatient, skilled nursing facility, orthopedics, all the things except for pediatrics. And again, just got burnt out. It wasn't really for me. I just noticed that there was a lot of things wrong with the healthcare system, and it became very frustrating for me. And I really felt for the patient. There was just so much lack of patient education. There's a lot of things just based off of insurance reimbursement, which kind of chokeholded me as a practitioner, because you can only do what pays the most. And a lot is based off of productivity versus actual patient care. There was one place I worked at that this patient was having visible signs of a heart attack. And in those situations, you're supposed to stay there, and you're supposed to be with the patient in case you have to administer CPR, call 911. And so did the whole thing. And then they were like, okay, you can go to the next house while you're waiting for the ambulance to come. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not. It's just, that's what I mean. They're just all based off of productivity. Why would I leave this? No, absolutely not. I'm not going to kill a patient. Are you? I don't know. It's just a moral standard. So I got to a point where I was just like, screw it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to do something. So I went and did a one-way ticket around the world. Well, not really around the world, I went to Southeast Asia. So I went and traveled to Bali on my own, met one of my best friends there, who I didn't know before. I didn't really have a plan or anything, but I ended up studying yoga over there, stayed there for about 60 days, came back to the States, did another rotation in OT, then came and did some backpacking in Vietnam and in Australia, stayed in an ashram. So I lived in an ashram in Australia. And then I started working at a retreat center in Hawaii, and as a yoga teacher, and then also as one of their chefs, which I don't know how that happened. I don't have any formal training as a chef, but I just really love food and I loved Ayurveda. I know, right? And I was kind of dabbling in Ayurveda at that minute. I hadn't like completely dived into it. I just knew what I knew from books and stuff. By the way, you cannot learn Ayurveda from a book. Hands down. You cannot learn it from a book. So you need a guide. So I just dabbled in some certain things. I made kitchery. I made that like one of the nights at the retreat center. And then I ended up having a near-death experience while I was living in Hawaii. It was very unexpected. And I just took in way more than my body should have of a substance. So I decided after that moment, after I grounded and came back into this realm, that I was no longer playing around. And this is, Ayurveda is something that I really wanted to do, but I was kind of scared to go back to school because I already had my master's degree and took like a board certification exam. And that was just pure hell. So I didn't want to go back to school. But after I had that experience, I was like, screw it. I don't care. I'm going to do what I have to do. So then I, found a mentor online who was reputable, and I ended up studying with her. And then, the rest is history. I slowly left the hospital that I was working at as a PRN therapist and started my own practice, started taking on one-on-one clients, and just kind of evolved from there.
Awesome. Just to travel around like you did and have those opportunities, talk about manifestation and, and then the universe kind of nudges us in directions sometimes that the how doesn't make sense. Like, for example, having something happen that is, scary, but I think that, I don't know all of your story, but you have a fearlessness about you, which I really love. And I think that coupled with the ferocity of passion that you have for Ayurveda, like you embody it, you really believe in it. I think that, having a guide like that is the best possible kind, because you don't get caught up in people's stories of doubt and other things. And you have real, I guess, tools and ways, like solutions for people to help themselves. So I love how much you educate through your courses as well as your one-on-one. I thought it would be interesting for us to explore the difference, and tell me if I'm like, this is jumping too ahead because I have a background of knowledge, but if you could explain, two-part question. One, doshas to people. And then explain also the difference between prakriti and vikriti. Did I say that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Great questions. Thank you for asking, because not many people understand that. Exactly. So let me start with prakriti and vikriti first. So prakriti, all right, this is a Sanskrit term. What is that? Prakriti has different meanings and always depends on the context of which you're using it in. But in this context, we can see that prakriti is basically your genetic dosha. And dosha is like think of that as like a mind body type. And we know this as part of there's modern research on this as well as epigenetics. Epigenetics can kind of go hand in hand with Ayurveda in a lot of different ways. So that part of you, that is your genetics, that is your prakriti, that is how you were formed. That's just like the way that this body is. I'm a tall, skinny girl, but not everybody out there is tall, skinny girls. So There's people have different genetics, and they have that genetic part of them, that property makes them predisposed to certain types of diseases. And epigenetics tells us that 95% of our disease-related genes are under our control. So think of that 5% as your property and that 95% as your vikriti. So your vikriti is your current imbalance. Let's say you don't have an imbalance and you're like feeling good, everything's all right. You know, you might have like everybody has like maybe some anxiety or maybe some fears or maybe some, you know, like bloating here or there, some random stuff happen. That's when your property and your vikriti kind of match each other. And you're in a stable spot. And you don't have any issues with digestion or skin or, you know, nails, hair, or anything like that. Now, that vikriti is your current imbalance. That vikriti, your imbalance dosha, that mind body type, is imbalanced by certain things in the environment. So that could be like the season, the climate that you live in, the stage of life that you're in, the you know, what's going on for you stress wise right now, if you're moving, if you come back from traveling, if you're going somewhere with traveling, and then what you're eating as well. So the foods that you're putting into the body. So your foods that you put into the body can be aggravating to your genetics, or it can be not. It's that 95% that's really under our control. And that's where we get to play and actually get to take responsibility for our health. Because if you want to move from a state of disease into a state of health, it's just one meal away. It's just one meal away. You just gotta, within the next meal, you can get there. You just have to keep going in that direction rather than direction you've been going in. And Ayurveda is not like broccoli is good for everybody. No, broccoli is not good for everybody. You know, there's certain properties that get aggravated by broccoli, especially the way that it's cooked. Because it's a cruciferous vegetable, has a lot of air and ether within it. And it can be kind of drying to the tissues of the body. And that's just one example. So for somebody who has a property that's already very dry, that can be very aggravating to them. But if somebody has a property that's already, that's moist and oily and heavy, then that type of vegetable will be very pacifying to them. So not everybody's created equally.
Now, if you have, so say someone's prakriti is Pitta Kapha, and let's say their vikriti is, I don't know, Pitta Vata, is that how it would work? How would you correct the vikriti? Would you eat according to, is it like meets like, or would you go back to what is best for your original prakriti? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Great question. Again, Erin with the questions.
I'm telling you, what can I say?
Yeah, so you always have to address the vikriti, because the vikriti will always mask, the imbalance will always mask who you really are. So yeah, you need to keep this in mind in the background, but you really need to get rid of this first so that they can match each other. The vikriti and the prakriti should match each other. Make sense?
Yes.
And then that's really where you again, from the book, right? You can't create healing from a book. You can't learn Ayurveda from a book or quiz or anything like that. That's really where you need a guide to kind of lead you through what's appropriate for you and your dosha and, you know, and the stage of life that you're in and everything. Everything has to do with everything. Yeah.
So if someone had that imbalance, let's say if we, you know, just like a sample of foods, just so people kind of can connect to the idea of like what they would eat. So if someone's vikriti would be like vata, what did I say, pitta vata or something, and they're trying to get back to their original dosha of pitta kapha, but they have this imbalance. So what things like would they eat to, I guess, pacify that vikriti?
Yeah. So God, it just really depends on the person. I'm going to go with somebody who I'm working with right now, who's a Vata Pitta. So basically this person that I'm working with, I'm just using her as an example because everybody's different. She has, so for her specific story, she has a lot of malabsorption issues. parasites, issues with, bones, issues with hair, nails, stuff like that. Some people, I'm sure, can relate to that. Has frequent loose bowel movements, has like a hard feeling in her abdominal area. And that's where she started. And a lot of her teeth were falling out before because of this sort of malnourishment there. There was like a malabsorption problem. We did the dosha intake where we found out what was her Vikruti, right? Like what was in balance with her. Vata Pitta, for sure. She's also in Vata stage of life too. So Vata stage of life is when you're 50s and up, pretty much. And that's when the body starts to become lighter and lighter. It's no longer building, it's becoming lighter, and we become more spiritual, and we're, in that stage. So for her certain quality, we always treat with opposite qualities in Ayurveda. If somebody's feeling heavy, then we give them light things, right? Like kaphas, they feel heavy. That's earth and water. That's what kapha manages in the body. That's heavy. That's like mud. So we have to give that person something light, which is like sprouted mung beans and sprouted grains, and a smaller amount of grains and more vegetables, like broccoli, for example, and cauliflower. Broccoli comes back around. More beans and legumes, those types of things, and vegetables, like more of a plant-based diet. Now, for somebody who has like her, who has more of those light qualities, but also hot. It's hot and light because of the parasite infection. She also had an infection in her lungs as well. There was these little infections going on. And if you could also see on her tongue that there were some heat bumps there as well. So we would need to have the opposite of those qualities, which would be a heavier. And she was dry, very dehydrated. You could tell in her tissues that they were very like emaciated and dehydrated. So moist, cool for the heating quality, and heavier and dense. So she needs things that are going to, ground her a little bit more. She was eating she was sort of grazing throughout the day, which is very typical of somebody who has like a vata, a lot of vata to them. She's sort of grazing throughout the day and eating a lot of raw vegetables and raw fruits and stuff like that. So we did away with that. We had her at specific meal times. This is breakfast time. This is lunch time. This is dinner time. And you can see how that just alone will ground somebody, because there's like little anchors throughout the day. Like this is when you're sitting down to eat breakfast. This is when you're sitting down to eat lunch. And this is when you're sitting down to eat dinner. And then also just like these warm and moist cooked foods as well, like khichdi, for example. It's more of like a meal. We look at meals and their qualities rather than the individual foods. Root vegetables, because those have a grounding effect to them, and whole grains also like heavy grounding effect, and whole grains are also end up being cooling on the body. There's certain vegetables that are also cooling on the body, like cilantro is a great vegetable that's cooling. Cucumbers, coconut as well. So we can incorporate those with her as well. And there's many other vegetables like greens, but you have to saute those greens and you have to cook them appropriately for that body type so it doesn't bring out a lot of the lightness there, because greens can be very light. You see how convoluted this all is? Everybody's convoluted.
I can see why you need a guide.
And that's why you need a guide. You can't, it's kind of irritating sometimes where you're like, oh yeah, I've tried Ayurveda, but it doesn't work. Okay, well, what'd you try? Well, I read a book and I did a quiz at the end of the book and they told me I should have this types of food. Well, there's a reason why that didn't work. That's the same as going to like WebMD, plugging in your symptoms and then telling you your treatment. It's different. You have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like yoga asana. It's best to have a guide. Or the example I like to give is, people if they think they understand yoga without having the experience of it, it's like trying to describe what it's like being in love without having been in love, which is, everybody know, is just it's like beyond the realm of the mind, right? So it's I believe it's an intuitive science. And even to the point, one of the quotes from Ayurveda I really love is, it's less about what you eat and it's more how you digest or how you eat, right? Because just as you were speaking, I'm thinking, okay, so there's food combining, there's certain foods that go together, and like certain foods that maybe you can have, but you eat apart, so that I guess like dairy and meat shouldn't be together, correct?
Right. And, fruit is a big example that a lot of people tend to mess up, because a lot of people have like these morning smoothies. They're like, look at me, I'm on a healthy trend now. So they'll put like the frozen fruits in the smoothie with maybe some extra ice in there too, even though the fruit is frozen. So it's like extra, extra cold. By the way, nothing should be eaten cold or drinking cold, because it just freezes your digestion. There's there's a difference between like Western nutrition, not saying that there's anything wrong with it, and Ayurvedic nutrition. Ayurvedic nutrition is all about eating for your digestion, like you were saying, like eating to support good, strong digestion for your specific metabolic type, which is your dosha. And then there's Western nutrition, which is a lot about like carbs, proteins, and fats, these micronutrients or macronutrients, and then also micronutrients is the different vitamins that you get from foods and stuff like that. Well, that's all good and well, but what if you can't absorb those foods, those vitamins and minerals? Because of a malabsorption issue, because of a digestion issue, or like metabolic syndrome, or something's going on. And that's where Ayurveda comes in and really strengthens digestion. That is what our eating is about. So with the smoothie example and food combining, fruit digests a lot quicker than other foods. And so if you combine fruit with other foods, it's going to confuse the stomach, and it'll end up causing fermentation and gas, because things will not be digested correctly. So like if you're going to have a smoothie, make sure it's in the summertime when more fruit is in season anyways, and make sure it's an all fruit smoothie, not like fruit and vegetables and ice. Definitely no ice. Make sure it's fresh fruit, not frozen fruit. That completely changes the structure of the fruit and the qualities of it if you freeze it. So you can see that there's different, it's not like just apricots. There's a difference between like a fresh apricot versus a frozen apricot versus a dried apricot. They'll be digested completely differently. So yeah.
That's fascinating. What say ye, Claire?
I have a question about, as you were talking, I thought, Ayurveda is not just about food. Would you share a few of the other type of practices that help restore health to our body?
Yes, agreed. It is not just about food. This is a holistic practice. There's certain things called dinacharyas in Ayurveda. These are daily cleansing practices and just lifestyle practices that somebody can do depending on what season it is, and also their dosha too. So there's warm oil massage, like my girl who's Vata Pitta that I was just telling you about. She would do great with a warm oil massage. That's just getting a little bottle of oil, warming it up in a basin of like warm water, and then massaging the small joints here in circles, and then doing long strokes of the long bones. There's dry, that's really grounding for the nervous system. Excellent to do morning or night. Night for sleep, morning just to stay calm and grounded. There's dry brushing that's really stimulating for the lymphatic system, and also to open up the sweat glands as well. That is stimulating, right? That has a stimulating effect. A warm oil massage has a calming effect. So the stimulating effect is going to be better for people who have a Kapha constitution, not so much the people who have a Vata constitution, because it'll be too overstimulating for them. And maybe they could do that like not every day, for example, maybe just during the springtime and once a week or something like that. So that's the same thing. You take a dry brush, you do circles here at the joints, and then long strokes, and you follow the lymphatics with it going towards the heart. There is Nasya as well. Nasya is basically oiling the nose. So that is when you come in with some oil, and it's usually like a medicated oil. There's herbs in it. Lean your head back. Drop some oil in your nostrils, and you inhale it. This is an opener for the brain. This basically cleanses and oleates, if that's a word, Moisturizes, that's the word I'm looking for. Moisturizes these, I know, right? These mucous membranes here in the head. And so that's really, really good for people who have dryness there and also need to repair right there as well. Sometimes people with chronic sinusitis, it's very good for them as well after doing a neti pot, which is another daily cleansing practice as well. Neti pot is when some people have seen it before, you kind of tilt your head to the side, you put some warm water, warm saline water in the little basin, and then water comes out the other side of your nostril. So that's a good practice to get into. It doesn't have to be every day, but it's good, especially for some constitutions that have issues here in their sinus to help get rid of excess mucus, like kaphas. They need to get rid of that excess mucus there. And then you can do nausea right afterwards. And then also just daily, honestly, for everybody, good asana for sure, a good asana practice. And meditation. I think everybody should do some sort of form of meditation and breath work too. Because we really, in Ayurveda, there's a saying that as the breath, so the mind. So if somebody has this sort of vata type of breathing, like asthma or like a hyperventilating sort of breathing, even without knowing it because they're just stressed, then that's going to add to their imbalance. Bringing back slow, long, sustained breaths for them is very beneficial, and really being conscious of that and doing active breath work for it. And then for somebody who is a kapha, then they want to have more stimulating breath, like breath of fire would be really good for them. And then that short, sharp exhales would be good because that's really adding the lightness factor back to them. But that would be aggravating for somebody who is a vata. So breath work is very strong, strong. Okay. Somebody can get imbalanced just from breath work. So especially a vata. So you need the guide to kind of know what would be most appropriate for you. And meditation, like I said before, spending time outside in nature and just being conscious throughout life. There's many things that go into this, so your relationship with food has to do with how you digest things and your, how you are mentally and the things that you're holding on to. We're holding on to so much shit all the time. We walk around as our 4-year-old versions of ourselves, and just letting go of that and practicing a good meditation daily to just let go and surrender is medicine in and of itself. I mean, that's one of the dinacharyas. It's one of the things that we do on a daily basis.
I say that meditation is emotional and mental hygiene. You even say astral hygiene. And when I explain it to people in that way, you wouldn't, not brush your teeth and then walk around just talking all your talk. You want to get close to people. So, it's tartar on your mind, on your spirit, so to speak. And it's, it's the distortions from this buildup of plaque within your body, and then the way you perceive the world. It's the more that I'm in this, in the healing game, the more I recognize over and over again, it comes back to manage your mind, calm your nervous system. And a lot of issues will repair themselves because of the body's own built-in healing mechanisms. So I'm I know some things about Ayurveda, but to know, of course, it includes asana. Of course, it includes, pranayama work. It's just so beautifully comprehensive.
Yeah. And it has to be something that is applicable to you too, because not everybody's going to do the perfect asana every day. And not everybody's going to do the perfect dinacharya every day. There are some people who have to wake up at 3 a.m. to get to work and can't do their full morning practice at that time. So you have to meet yourself where you're at and do things that just fit into your lifestyle. So yeah.
I like to just add in, that's, I think, one of your greatest attributes that I've seen. Bridgette happens to be my coach. And one of the great things that has helped me so much in progressing forward is her ability not only to be compassionate, but to look at it at her client's life and say, you're okay right where you are. Now let's take a step forward. Okay, this is how life is going to be. It's not going to be perfect. I happen to be a big perfectionist, and it's not going to be perfect. So let's do what we can do to make a step forward. Anyway, she's taught me that, and it's amazing the step forwards we've been able to take together. So it's been an exciting journey for me personally, and I so recommend her guidance and her teaching. It's just been it's been life-changing for me personally. And sustainable. I think that's been a really important part. Everybody starts new things and does new diets, new programs. I'm going to start this thing, but keeping it at a sustained level. I think that's pretty miraculous.
Yeah, I think that's necessary. If you have too many things going on, it's you're sort of like pulling the rug out from underneath you before you even get started. It's overwhelming, and making things sustainable. Having it's said that for sustaining change, having like a 1% change or like a 5% change in your routine, right? It doesn't seem like that much, but like over the course of the year, like that compounded change will equal like a complete like turnaround almost. So, and in relation to perfectionism because I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist, the compassion of a guide, and then also as you illuminate your own inner guru, having compassion from the outside, especially when we're very firm with ourselves, brings about a balanced action. There's a quote from the Yoga Sutras, it's 2.33. It's sthirham sukham asanam, a balance of ease and steadiness in the body, or masculine and feminine, solar and lunar energies. So having the compassion of Bridge, to guide you is, for me, when I was younger, I needed like someone that was going to whip me into shape, that was going to like, I was like a little shit, and I was real fiery, and I needed someone to like with a firm hand. My karate sensei, who, I loved him. And I think if I had a very like compassionate person, it probably would have been right for me at that stage. But now, as a 39-year-old woman, like having a nurturing, compassionate person to guide, I think creates sustainability. So
the other part I love about this, I don't care what age you are, it will be a blessing to you to look into this.
Yeah.
I will be 70 this next week, and I have made great progress. My mantra is you're not dead yet. Okay. And so you need to be able to progress and enjoy your life at every stage. And I find that Ayurveda allows me to do that at a greater level than I've experienced before.
Agreed. And, for those listening, I found this fascinating, and people might not know this, but just like how in traditional Chinese medicine, there's like pulse diagnostics as well as tongue diagnostics, that is present in Ayurveda, and it's helpful. I think these are probably some things that, maybe the tongue, just looking at your tongue, like what's going on today? And by the way, if you don't tongue scrape and then you look at your tongue, it's fucking disgusting. And my my yoga teacher trainees learn that every year. We kind of keep it secret that we're going to give them a tongue scraper for the Ayurveda little module. And then like we show it, and then we have them go to the bathroom, and you just hear, ew, oh my God, why is it that color? Like it's really a little bit of surprise and humiliation goes a long way. Anyways, my point, what I wanted to ask is, Are there, maybe you can share with our listeners, like just a few things that maybe like a bump or a red spot or something might indicate within their health, just so we can have our listeners run to the bathroom and go with their tongue.
Absolutely. I was thinking about like doing a course or something about like the language of the body so that people can pick up on these sorts of things, because these are just our body's a way of communicating with us, like, hey, something's off, and here it is. And so we need to speak this language. So tongue wise, so that's one of the main things I look at when I look at people when I do their intake. Many different things you can see on the tongue. You want to look at your coating first. There's going to be some kind of coating there, I'm sure, especially if you don't tongue scrape. If you do tongue scrape, look at the coating in the first thing in the morning before tongue scraping or eating or drinking or anything like that. If it's a green coating, it usually is too much heat in the system. If it's like green or yellow, that's the same thing, too much heat. Pitta people usually have a green or yellow coating. If it's grayish, then that's more and dry. That's more of a vata sort of coating. If it is white and thick, then that is more of a kapha kind of coating. I usually look at the edges of people's tongues too, if there's any like teeth marks there around the edges. What happens is that when there is malabsorption in the small intestine, it swells the tongue and it presses up against the teeth. And so that shows malabsorption in the small intestine, which is where you absorb those macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats. Not so much the large intestine. If you want to know if you have malabsorption in large intestine, which is where you absorb vitamins and minerals. So this has a lot to do with bone issues, teeth issues, hair issues, nail issues. Then you look at the nails, and if you have vertical lines on your nails or any ridges on your nails, or even the horizontal lines there, that's usually malabsorption within the large intestine. If there's heat bumps, so we say that there's like these little dots, right? Little red dots on the tongue, and that shows inflammation in the corresponding area where the little dots are, because most of the organs of the body are represented on the tongue. You can't see the reproductive organs, you can't see like neurological organs and stuff like that, but you can see the lungs, you can see the heart, you can see the digestive organs too, you can see the liver and the spleen. So you can kind of see where those red dots are and pinpoint where you have some kind of inflammation too. The front of the tongue usually represents the lungs and the heart area. And then the middle of the tongue is like liver, spleen, small intestine, back of the tongue, large intestine. And then there's kidney bumps, or not kidney bumps, but kidneys on the two sides of the back of the tongue. If somebody's peeing a lot and they have like low kidney energy, in traditional Chinese medicine, they'd be like low kidney qi, and they might be possibly drying out their kidneys. A lot of people are like, oh, I drink so much water. I don't know why I'm like not healthy. I drink like this much water. Sometimes if there's a low kidney energy, then that can deplete the kidneys and it can wear them out and have an exhausting sort of effect to it. Those people will have bumps on the end of their tongue there. And they'll probably be peeing a lot as well.
That's interesting. And what you just said about like the placement of the organs, like the front being a lung and heart, and then the middle, the liver and small intestine and spleen, and then the back, the kidneys. It's like this, it's the same in traditional Chinese medicine. And I always love when there's like crisscross of like different modalities that, because it's like, it's probably originated in one place, right? And I'm sure like Chinese would say China, and then people in India might say India. I'm sure there's discrepancy there, but regardless, the beauty is that, it's, the body does have a wisdom. And like you said, for us to be true self-healing advocates, learning the language of the body helps us to step into our power, rather than just being clueless. Like, I don't know, I just got sick. It's like, all right, well, did you have any symptoms? I don't know. Like, I don't know if you've ever had people like come to you like that. I know I have, like, because I did body work for 15 years and I'm like, okay, Brian, you have like terrible sciatic pain. Like, when did this start? I don't know. Okay, where is it in your body? I can't tell. Like, you got to work with me here. Like, it's like people can be so, I don't know, checked out from their body, because the mind is such a powerful piece of technology. It can just run itself. Doesn't mean that you're, let's see, move ahead, thriving, but that's totally intentional. But having these ways to check in. I wanted to share that with our audience, and thank you for so eloquently describing that, because I want people to, after this podcast, look in the mirror and be like, start to like experiment and just see, and maybe see like, okay, maybe I'm going to, because the thing is with studies like Ayurveda and things, like maybe it does start in a book, right? They get curious, like how you did, right? Like how I did about yoga, or you take a yoga class. And you start to just, notice some things, and then you get really curious about it. And then you seek to understand underneath a practitioner. So having just like those little snips of knowledge, I think will help people tickle that bit of curiosity within them. So,
For sure.
Yeah. So, wow, there's so much to talk about, but I know that we have to get going. So I just wanted to ask you, we're going to have this in the show notes, but maybe Bridge, you can say like, how can people find you? What do you have available for them as far as courses? And, if they want to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
For sure. So you can find me on Facebook, Bridgette Ochoa. Ochoa is my last name. When you spell bridge like a bridge, it can go over. So you can always message me on there. I post a lot of stuff on there that's very informative. Post a lot about the tongue too, a lot of times. Because it's interesting to me. So I really like talking about it. You can also find me on Instagram at Bridge Ayurveda. So Bridge and then Ayurveda on Instagram. You can also find me on my website, bridgeayurveda.com as well. Right now, I have a Ayurveda Food as Medicine course that's starting April 20th, if anyone wants to join me in on that one. I also do one-on-one programs, and then I have a free, if you're just like dabbling and you want to learn a little bit more about Ayurveda and you want to get kind of an experience with a little bit of a cleanse. It is a challenge, though. It's not easy. It is a challenge. Then I have a free 3-day challenge where you can watch videos and learn a little bit more about Ayurveda and what I do and everything like that. And then also get a direct experience with a very classic Ayurvedic dish. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I just want to say, I did the 3-day cleanse challenge and it was awesome. And Bridge was very patient and answering all my different questions. And so, you really feel supported on it. So if you're kind of on the fence, it's free. What do you have to lose? Nothing. And you get to know somebody who's awesome, and you get to learn a little bit more about your health and see if this, can do some wonderful things for you, because it probably can. So anything else, Claire, for today?
I just recommend, Bridgette, absolutely come and see. Try that 3-day challenge. It's wonderful. And what I loved about it is it got rid of my cravings. So I could absolutely get started on a plan and a path that would make me healthier. So recommend it 1,000%.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bridgette Ochoa, and check her out. She is awesome. We're going to have the resources also in the show notes. And thank you, everyone. Happy healing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Aaron@aaroncoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Thank you so much. Namaste.